Welcome back to the Ex-Homeschoolers Club. I am your host, Jacob Gooden, and today I am joined with my lovely friend, Eliya. Eliya is actually the younger sister of a former guest, Carrie. And Eliya, you and I have known each other for a very long time.
Yes,
our families
true.
have been like best friends for, I don't know how long at this point. Maybe it feels like 20 years. I know that's not the
Yeah,
case, but it feels like it.
it definitely feels like that. I know my dad was your music teacher, and you were kind of our dance teacher at one point, and went to a lot of school stuff together. It was like a very long time of growing up.
Yeah, it's so funny too because I now like obviously we catch up every now and then, but it's so funny because I still like I see certain people as like these little kids in my eyes. And you and my sister are like two of those people who I just still when I look at you guys, I see like 10-year-old people. And that's just not the case. You guys are full-fledged adults. You're very like strong and capable women. And I love you both. But it's just funny to like get on calls with them and be like, "Oh my gosh, like this person is not a child anymore."
Oh yeah, I know. Because I think you were in the same like school year as my oldest sister, and so, yeah, I was a very different child back then too. I like was very quiet and kind of timid, and so yeah, I yap a lot now, and I'm a bit different, so it makes sense. You're like, why are you? This is different. You're not the same person.
No, you really. It's funny because I feel like you have really come into your own, and it's cool to like watch you have gone to college and now like be out of there and have a career and be doing life. But
It's crazy.
yeah, it is kind of wild. But okay, so backing up to the very beginning, you have
Yes.
been homeschooled your entire life. For like 12, 13 years of your life, you were homeschooled. What did that look like? How did that feel? Like, give me a little bit of like the day to day. What did that look like for you?
Yeah. Yeah. So yes, I was homeschooled like literally all the way through my senior year of high school. I feel like every homeschool family is like, a little different to their own. There's like the super like intense, like graduate at 14 and like wake up at like 5 a.m. and like super strict, like Olympian level. Like we're doing our own schedule with homeschool to like get ahead and like, you know, be like, in UCLA by the time you're like 15. I know those families for sure. And then it's such a huge spectrum. There's like way like different people that maybe like move at a slower pace or like just have are religious, or maybe you're not religious. Like there's a lot of different factors. So for me, I was the youngest of three kids. So I felt like my oldest sister got like a lot of the like boom, like structure, let's do this, like academics, and then my middle sister was like okay, and then mine was a lot more like chill and laid back for my like academic experiences. So I grew up in like obviously, you were there, so but like a homeschool sort of group with our community. So and it was like Christian based, so it was like a faith based like Christian group with a bunch of families that would like meet every other week and like do some classes. But my individual like family and stuff, we were really laid back with like the pacing of everything. So it was a lot of like independence with me from a very young age, with like I have to get my own work done, and like I have to be a self-starter, and I have to like not rely on other people to like, I don't know. It was just a lot more independent with my own education. So I feel like that was a big part of my like high school, especially, was like I have to get my stuff done. And I feel like if I was a parent too, it's like by the time you get to the third kid, I don't know, it's not that serious. It's like, do your homework, I guess. Like
Your parents are two of the most like laid back people I know
yeah.
personally. They have always just been super chill. I
Hmm.
I remember a time being, I think it was at your house, and we were going somewhere, and we were running extremely late. And I came from the household of like mom who's just like very like we're on time. If we're on time, we're late kind of a person. And so,
Totally.
and that's my mentality too. I'm like, but I'm a firstborn kid. I've got that like I have to be there 5 minutes early kind of a thing. And your mom and dad were so chill the entire time. I was like, where is the fire to go? Where is the like we're not gonna make it? And your mom was just like, it's okay. We're gonna get there when we get there. There's no like hard time to like. There was no actual like we have to be there at exactly this time.
Yeah.
And so I will say your parents taught me to chill out quite a bit
nice.
and just like relax, take a breath, like relax. But that can also be a bummer, like you said, like if you were not a self-starter person,
Right.
you know, that can be a bummer when it comes to education because some people need that like kick in the pants from a parent, right? To be like, you got to get this done.
Right. Yeah, for sure. And I think that I kind of did struggle with that a bit because it is hard when you're young, like you to be like having so much responsibility. And that's sort of a big theme for my childhood too, which is kind of my fault because I liked to like take charge of things or like take a lot on and then think that I could handle it like an adult. And I was like, oh, I was young. I look back and I'm like, why was I 12 like with this much responsibility, you know? But I was working a lot. Like I literally started working, volunteering for, you know.
Volunteering for money.
You know, it was not official. But I started working like pretty young, like early high school. And then, which is nice in the fact that I had the schedule flexibility to like work more hours than a lot of other kids. But like I worked in sports and stuff. And so I would like coach a lot and I was able to like raise money like from a much younger age. So I had time to like save up. I was like very much like I need to save money. I need to like work. I need to do all these things. And so like that's like a plus I think of homeschool that I had of like having the time and like availability to get some savings going because I wasn't born rich, you know. It's rough out here in this economy.
Yeah, no, I feel you. I always tell people, yeah, by the time I was done like those last 2 years of high school, like I mean I worked at your dad's studio, you know, I had my own guitar lesson company that I taught. I did odd jobs for people. I mowed lawns. I did whatever, you know. It's just like, but that was the cool thing about homeschool was like we had the flexibility to like make it happen, right? And so if you needed to be somewhere at 10:30 in the morning for a job, you could just do it, you know. And it's like, yeah, maybe school's happening at 8 o'clock at night, but who cares,
right?
You know?
Yeah, as long as you have a ride. I mean.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and once you're old enough to drive, then it's like, well, you just got to make sure you have access to a car, you know, and then just go.
Yes. So. Yeah.
That's super cool.
So
I remember you guys because you worked at a gymnastics place, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
so I remember you guys.
Oh yeah, because your sister and I did gymnastics. There. Yeah, together.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, but yeah, I remember. You guys would always just like you guys just knew how to do certain. I was just like, oh my god, I'm not that flexible. I can dance, but like I can't do the splits. I can't, you know, I can't be on a balance beam. I no longer know how to balance myself. Like I trip over my own 2 feet at this point.
Valid. Honestly, I do too sometimes, and I was a gymnast, so it'd be like that sometimes. But yeah, I did gymnastics for a long time, which is also, again, nice in the sense that I was like working so that I could take gymnastics also, like, because again, wasn't born a millionaire, so it was like, you know, hard to afford things. So it was nice that I could like, okay, I can work and like work my way towards taking classes. Like the more I work, the more I can like take more, like I could do competitive gymnastics because of that. And like I learned work ethic pretty quick. You know, I remember my boss, like when I was like 14, being like, hey, you got to step it up. Like, I got other people on the phone that could replace you right now. And I was like, oh, I'm learning real quick. I got to actually, like, earn my keep here. Which, you know, sometimes you don't realize till much later. Some people, it's much, much later that they're like, oh, yeah, it's not always a given, depending on where you are, I guess. But anyway, I learned work ethic.
Yeah, no, I live in an area now that, like, when I worked at a barbecue restaurant when I first moved to Nashville, and there was a lot of kids who this was their first job. You know, they're 15, 16 years old. it's their first job and they have zero work ethic. They like very clearly didn't want to be there. Mom and dad were just kind of pushing them to get a job. And I was like, you guys gotta have some kind of fire under you. And I get that it's not, serving food is not the greatest job in the world. It can be very rewarding, but it is not for everybody. I'll give them that. But oh my gosh, I was like, guys, you got to get some fire under your butt. But I was just used to the homeschool world where it's like so many of us, like you said, we did bartering for certain things. We would work odd jobs. We had our own companies. Like we did all kinds of stuff and had kind of that like drive and that discipline to like get it done, right? We wanted to make something happen. We would make it happen. I know, at least for Carrie, it might have been for you too, but like you guys really enjoyed going to Comic-Con. And
we were nerds.
Yeah. Hey, I'm still a nerd. But I know like your parents were like, you want to go to Comic-Con? You got to pay for it. And you guys would just like bust ass to like figure out how to pay for it.
And bake sales. Whoa. Yeah. That's so true.
And like, that was just the way it was. It was just like, hey, we got to figure it out, and that's super cool.
Yeah.
To have that. And then I'm sure that has translated so much now into like you're a musician now and, performing and wanting to be out there and getting your music in front of more and more people. Like that takes hard work and a lot of just like dedication to like, I might not feel like getting up to go to this bar and perform, but like I got to do it, right?
Got to get that bag.
Yeah.
Got to make those connections.
Absolutely. Very cool. Well, so talk to me a little bit. So like homeschooling, it seems like we kind of had similar homeschooling journeys as far as just like we were at home, but also like we did have that achieved connection of like having a group of people to come together for things like field trips, school dances, the support systems were there, obviously, where if one parent was struggling with something, we could go to somebody else's house and maybe get science classes, and we had group solutions and things like that, which was awesome. But tell me a little bit about like once you got through high school, what was like that next phase? Like, did you immediately go to college? Did you take a little bit of time? Like, what did that look like, the transition out?
Yeah, so for me, like my senior year of high school, I kind of started panicking because all of my like little independent girly moments of working and like trying to do school to the best of my ability, like I kind of realized like I felt behind. I felt like I started comparing myself, to like other people that were those overachievers, and I just was like, what do I do? And I think I remember I listened to your episode where you're talking about this, like sometimes there's not that like assistance with the transition to college and homeschool. Like it's sort of, again, it just depends on the family, and my family was really chill about college, so I like didn't even really know like how to apply or like what it would look like or if I should go. My older sisters did a little bit, but or one of my older sisters did a little bit, but so I was kind of freaking out. But I ended up doing community college for 2 years, and that was like a huge help. I'm a big advocate for community college. I know that there's shows like Community that are wacky and wild, and that's kind of what it's like, but I'm still a big fan. No crapping on the community college. They helped me so much. So I really appreciated my time there because I was like talking with counselors, like I could figure out what I wanted to do without spending $1 billion on tuition, and so I stayed like in the area and stayed working and then took classes, and I got connected with their music department, and I really loved that and started like taking more lessons. And I also got into the psychology department, which I didn't really know I wanted to do. And so I basically like did that for 2 years and then transferred to a university, transferred to Azusa Pacific University after that. And I did 3 years there because of COVID. COVID really hit me like a truck, hit everybody like a truck. So I did 3 years there.
That's super cool. I feel like a lot of homeschool kids kind of did that transition from like, high school to community college to kind of figure it out, and then went to a university or figured out they wanted to go more down a trade route, something like that. I know for me, I just was like, I needed the motivation of like leaving to like go. Otherwise I was going to get stuck. I just knew that about myself.
Right.
And so like I left and did school in 3 years. Super thankful, but like I had to just like work my ass off to like make it happen.
Yeah.
Because I just knew I was like, I'm going to get stuck otherwise. But so many people I feel like needed that transition time to be like, okay, here's what a real classroom feels like, right? And here's how to deal with college professors, right?
Right.
And a lot of times those community colleges can help point you in the direction of figuring out like, oh, I think I want to major in this. Okay, well, what school should I go to for that? You know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. And I think I just didn't even, I remember being at community college and I had never even like kind of dreamed of going to a university. Like I had no idea what that looked like. I didn't feel capable in myself, like academically, like I had no real idea like what college would look like. And so I think that's not every homeschooler for sure, but that was definitely me in the sense of like, I didn't feel like I had outside resources to like, hey, let's go look at colleges, or like, you're completely capable. I was like, I don't know, I don't even feel like my transcripts are legit, or like, you know, it's tricky. It's like, it's so its own thing that's so different from like the public school system that I just had a lot of insecurity like going into my first year of college. So I felt like community college gave me the confidence, gave me the direction, and like one of my music teachers who is amazing, and I really credit, that was not a grammatically correct sentence, but one of my music teachers was really amazing in believing in me and like basically telling me, yeah, you could get a scholarship into college, actually, like you are perfectly capable. And I was like, huh, that's crazy, because I don't even know what I'm doing. And I feel like everybody doesn't know what they're doing when they're 18 anyway, so I wasn't the only one. But so I basically like worked my ass off at community college to get really good grades, to like get that academic scholarship. I worked my ass off in music to get a music scholarship, and like I essentially was able to get almost a free ride for university at a private school, which is crazy. Wow. And I did a double degree, so look at me now. I have 2 bachelors. Yeah.
What did you end up majoring in?
Psychology and music. So I have like 2 separate degrees basically in those. It's a BA and a BM basically. So literally like 16-year-old me would like think that that's insane. I didn't even know what a bachelor's degree was, in full transparency. So it's really wild.
No, I feel you. I feel you with like the scholarship thing. Like I didn't really, I got a good scholarship to the school I went to, but I was like, when they sent it to me and I was like, they want to give me how much money? Like I was blown away, because I didn't feel dumb, but I didn't feel incredibly smart either.
Right. It's hard to compare. Yeah.
It is. Yeah, it is too, because like you're competing with yourself a lot of times in the homeschool world, where it's like, yeah, of course, like I know my other friends were also getting good grades, but like subjective to what? Like however their parents decided to grade. And so I was thankful. My mom reframed our homeschool experience in the fact that she's like, we are technically a private school in the state of California. And I was like, oh, okay. So that it gave me a little bit more like security, and that I was like, okay, when the state is looking, and other states, when colleges are looking at my education, they're looking at a private education, a private school education, right? And so it reframed it, I think, enough that it gave me more confidence. And then also my folks paid for me to have some assistance in high school to like, what is the FAFSA, and like what colleges should I be applying for, and things like that. And I was so hyper fixated on like, I wanted to do this one specific thing. I wanted to be an audio engineer. And so there's not a lot of schools that offer that. So I was like, okay, well, it meant I have to go outside of California for some things potentially, or I have to go do this. And like, it helped give me that kind of like guidance of like you said, you had a music professor who said, well, you can totally get a scholarship, if you work really hard at this. And I don't know, I think it takes sometimes people who know a little bit about it to kind of give you that motivation to be like, oh yeah, I can totally do this. I got this, and here you are. Like you said, you double majored. And before we hit record, you were talking about, eventually you want to go and get a graduate's degree. Like that's amazing. That's fantastic,
Thank you. It's crazy.
Let's talk a little bit about like, passions. You come from a super creative family. Your dad owns a recording studio. He was my music professor.
Crazy.
He was music professor for
lucky
a
for
lot
that.
of homeschool kids. And I have such fond memories of one being in the studio. And I remember specifically this one birthday of his, all of it, your family and my family all being there and us like recording just like songs together. And just playing a bunch of instruments and stuff. But you and your sisters are super talented when it comes to music. But you have kind of taken that and like actually pursued it more as a career and as a hobby and like something you potentially want to do professionally. But yeah, tell us a little bit about like what you're doing with that and what's going on in the music world right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so my dad has a recording studio, and he is a guitarist and multi-instrumentalist, piano, bass, drums, all the things. And so that's like insanely like, rare to just be born into that is crazy. Like, I'm so aware of that privilege. Like, I'm very blessed and lucky to, have that in my family. So I'm super grateful for that opportunity, because I've grown up in the studio and I've been familiar with what a recording studio looks like. My dad and I recorded my album together. So while I was in community college, we recorded my first like debut album as myself, as my own artist. So yeah, musically, my dad taught me how to play guitar, but singing was always my favorite thing to do. And so from when I was little, I was like singing in church a lot. And then in high school, I got into like jazz and R&B music, and was working on my guitar chops too. And I started writing when I was like 16. And so it was like just for fun at first. And I really wanted to like, hey, literally a recording studio right here. I want to record. I want to make music. I want to like do the thing. And so that was really fun. That was really cool to like work with my dad. Also as like, on a more like work level, like that. Wow. Work with my dad on a work level. That's period. But it's kind of like, I'm basically, no, not me, but it's kind of like a Billie Eilish moment with her brother. She was homeschooled and she makes music with her brother. So that was like me with my dad, basically. So I've learned so much from him about like instrumental, like arranging and, playing guitar and music theory. He's a big nerd. He like also went to college and got his degree in music theory. Is music something, guitar performance, one of those.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah,
he's like the first to graduate from, was it Biola, with like whatever that degree was. Like he kind of designed and developed it himself, right?
Let's give him a shout out. It's so cool. He actually went to Azusa Pacific in like the 70s, yes. Late 70s where I went. I went in the 70s. But he was like their first guitar major, like basically like the first one at that school, which wasn't even a university at the time. It was like college. I don't know the terms, but yeah, he was like their first like guitar emphasis music major, which is so cool, because then I went, a couple years ago, and it's like, of course, there's like a bagillion of those now. There's plenty of performance majors. There's a whole program. But every time my dad would come to like my recitals or something, he'd be like, guys, like anyone in the hallway, like, did you know I actually like, I'm the first, like, so y'all better know, like, put some respect. They're like, who is this dude? Awesome. Like, I don't even know you, but so yeah, he's pretty cool, and I'm very grateful for everything that he's taught me. And then my sisters, I have two older sisters who also sing and did music, and they were always there to like yell at me if I was like not singing in tune or singing a bad harmony. They'd be like, shut up, what are you doing? Because they're your sisters. They don't care about your feelings ever, at least when you're the youngest. And so it was like, I got used to like the oh, I gotta fix this. Thankfully they all had like good ears too. And so that was sort of like my little music training, was them helping me not embarrass myself too much, to be like, yeah, that sounds bad, not that they were just like villains. They were lovely and great and awesome. Love you guys.
Yeah. No, but you guys had like, they pushed you to be the best version that you could possibly be.
Exactly.
And like, that's important,
they were keeping it real.
Exactly. It's funny because my mom always tells this story of my first guitar teacher. Shout out to Mrs. Roseanne Waltrip. May she rest in peace. But like I rented a guitar from her, and it was just a really crappy guitar. It was really bad, and my parents had made a deal with me. They said, hey, if you do this for 6 months and you want to keep going, we'll buy you a guitar. And I was like, okay, great. So I did it for 6 months, and they were like, okay, do you want to keep going? I said yes. And they could not believe it, because they were like, he sucks at guitar, like he's really bad at it. But they were like, okay, well, a promise is a promise. They took me to buy a guitar. We ended up getting a really nice guitar, and I still have it to this day. It's like one of the most beautiful guitars. I've had like professional musicians be like, this guitar is beautiful and amazing. So thank you, Mom and Dad, for a wonderful guitar. That makes a lot of people jealous. But literally, they put it in my hands. I refused to play it in the store because I was too embarrassed. Aww. Went home. We bought the thing. I went home, started playing guitar, and they both went, oh my gosh, he can play guitar. I had been playing such a crappy like Kmart guitar that it just didn't sound good. Like the guitar itself just didn't sound good. And then flash forward a couple years, and like taking lessons with your dad, and he taught me a lot more about playing electric guitar and how to run a music studio and how to play bass. And he tried to teach me how to play drums. Still can't do it. But that's okay. And but yeah, he was just like super musical, and so it was always cool too when we would all get in the studio and be able to record together. And and obviously hearing your music now, it makes me so happy, because like, one, I love jazz music. And stuff. So I'm always telling my friends, I'm like, oh, I got this friend, she's putting out jazz albums, you should go check them out. So anyway,
thank you.
So shout out to you.
I don't know. Wow. Disclaimer for the jazz specialists out there that are listening is not, I wouldn't call my album a jazz album. Okay, don't come for me, because it's technically like jazzy inspired pop for that album. But I also do jazz. I do real jazz too.
Yes.
Disclaimer.
Yes. No, and yeah. Well, and I saw at one point you got to perform with I'm blanking on the guy's name, but he
Michael
plays
Jackson.
like upright bass. Oh. He plays upright bass, and you know who I'm talking about. I'm trying to remember what their YouTube channel was, but they used to take like pop songs and make them into like a jazz version of it. And I saw a picture that you get to, or maybe a video of you performing with him, and I was like, oh my gosh, I know who that is.
Yeah, that was so cool. Yeah, it was actually so fun. His name's Casey Abrams. He's like one of my favorite musicians. He works with Postmodern Jukebox and everything, and he had a show in Ventura where that's my hometown. And so I was like, obviously I'm going. And I had already seen him live like multiple times in like previous years. But yeah, it was so fun. He was so incredibly kind. I like got to jump on stage with him for his show like halfway through and do like a duet with him on the spot, just on the fly. And he's like literally amazing. I love his music so much. So that was cool. That was a cool thing that happened like a while ago now. But I still remember it because it was such a fun time. And he's the best.
That's awesome. No, I love getting to see my friends like do cool stuff. It's like, it's so cool. And I'm hoping that at some point when I'm in town, you have a concert and I can come.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
I mean, I've seen you perform before, but it's usually been at like a homeschool talent show. Kind of thing, or like in my backyard, or in the studio.
Oh my gosh, yeah, yes, sorry, I didn't mean it. I got excited.
No, go for it.
At like our little homeschool dances, this was my little like self-starter self, as we're saying. They had like a live band that would play at these dances that were like vintage, like 50s stuff. And I just like went up to one of the organizers and I was like, hey, so I noticed that the band takes breaks in between sets. Can I like perform right then? Like when they're on a break? Like, can I do a performance? Can I just insert myself?
Yeah.
And they were like, oh, yeah, I guess so. Make sure it's like clean and wholesome. And I was like, okay, but I'm not gonna go up and do like something crazy. So I just did my little Postmodern Jukebox karaoke tracks, and I just popped up there and like sang while the band was on a break, and got the whole room going, hyping everybody up. And I would just I like no one asked for that. Why did I? I looked at videos and I'm like, this is so cringe, but like. You go. I think somebody gave me like $1 once, just out of like charity. I don't know.
You got to put yourself out there, especially as a musician.
You gotta
just, like,
have you gotta embarrass yourself sometimes, you know?
Exactly. There is a video of me online with Derry doing a song at one of our talent shows, and every year it gets sent to me by like 6 people when it pops up in their Facebook, memories page or whatever, and I love it. I love watching it. It's super cringy and I feel really awkward about it, but at the same time, like, I do love that was like something we got to do.
It's part of history,
Exactly. And every now and then, you get those friends and you get chit-chatting about the past and you bring that stuff up and it's like, oh yeah, I remember, you got to do this, or like, I remember seeing you sing at this thing and it was so cool. Like, we were so proud of you and whatever. And like, I love that, it's like it's cringy to look back on, but it was like so fantastic in the moment. So,
right.
And you brought up one of my favorite. Yeah, absolutely. And you brought up one of my favorite pastimes, which I think I've brought up successfully on every interview that I've done, which is like the swing dances of Achieve.
Take a shot every time and Jacob brings up swing dancing.
Exactly. New drinking game, the Ex-Homeschoolers Club drinking game. But you were also really big in the swing dance culture.
Oh my gosh. Yes, we have to talk about this because, oh my gosh. I was like your little student that like carried the banner after you graduated. I'm just like, I don't even know if you knew this exactly because you were gone, but in case you didn't know, I like took lessons, guys. I took swing dance lessons from Jacob because he was so cool and knew what he was doing, and I was terrified and 14 and didn't know like how to do anything related to dance. And he like taught lessons. They would have like these classes like at like backyards basically. I don't know. You were like dedicated.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm trying to remember, but I remember learning from you guys. And then after you guys graduated, I like realized that this is no shade, but also shade. Like the dancing at the dances was like not it. I was like, these people do not know how to dance. We're without our leader. And
I appreciate
the quality
you taking it up.
was dropping.
I appreciate you taking it up because I had learned from the Bozarth family, and they had actually taken lessons at the House of Dance in Ventura.
Fancy.
And so I took lessons from them, and then I took the lessons at House of Dance, which I know a lot of people also took lessons there. And then by the time, I don't know, those last couple years of high school, I was teaching every summer in my backyard, and then every now and then we'd also do a dance lesson at the dances themselves and show people how to do something. And and I remember you were one of my students, and but I'm glad that you took it up because that was one of the things that when I left, I knew my sister wasn't going to take it up, and I didn't really know who else was going to like interested in it, and I just kind of was like, I don't know, I didn't pass it to anybody. I just said, have at
Good
it.
luck.
And so I'm glad that you took it up.
Well, you can't blame anyone for what they don't know. They just didn't know.
Yes.
I was just noticing, I was like, I don't really want to go to a dance and get asked to dance and there's like no rhythm or like it's just awkward if you are trying and you don't know what you're doing. And how are you supposed to know if you haven't learned, So it's nice when people are like new to like high school and like this little community that we had. It's like, okay, it was another friend from the like who was also like a little star. I think he'd taken some lessons, and so I was like, do you want to have an alliance with me? What's that quote? And he was like, absolutely, I do. And then we were like, let's also make some money over the summer and then like help these kids out because how are they supposed to know? And then we just started making up our own moves too and just like gaslighting them a little bit because why not? It was fun. And so we'd be like, this is a swing dance move. We just made it up. But it was cool. Be creative. Why not?
The dances were super fun and super creative. And I think the only real downside to the school dances was the fact that we had like I don't want to say it was an insane dress code, but it was kind of an insane dress code.
It was kind of insane.
And it was much worse for the girls. So I apologize for that because like guys could get away with, as long as we wore slacks and a button down shirt, we were pretty much safe. But girls, I know you guys had to deal with like so many more things. So I apologize for that. Even though I had no control over it.
It was your fault, actually. How dare you?
Yeah, I mean,
Just
yeah,
kidding.
sorry.
No, yeah, no, it was so silly. Yeah, there's, it was a very religious like organization in the sense it was very faith based and Christian, and so there's extremes everywhere, no matter where you go. But our dress code was very like traditional, which I know happens in like private schools and stuff too. But like, I do remember like the skirts had to be like below your knee, and like the people who were like enforcing it were like committed. They were like committed to the bit. Like, I remember going in and like one time they were like, okay, no, you have to like get on your knees so we can like see that your dress is like touching or your skirt is like touching the floor. And then they would literally send you home if like your kneecap was showing. And come on, like, imagine you're like so excited to like go to this dance and like see all your friends because you're like a sad little homeschooler. No, I'm just kidding. Well, you're fine, but it's exciting. It's like, oh wow, we get to like, I've been taking classes from Jacob Gooden and I want to go dance. And then they're like literally embarrassing you in front of everyone. Like, there's a lot of psychological impact.
Well, it plays a lot into
as a kid,
like,
when you're like,
it plays a lot into, I mean, again, it was like a religious organization. So, I mean, there is a lot of that, like that purity culture mentality of like girls have a responsibility to like, dress a certain way and be a certain way. And like, because guys are animals and we can't control ourselves and things like that, which is, there needs to be a lot more responsibility put on guys, especially young guys, to learn how to just like compose, have composure and like understand when situations are, not a sexual situation.
Oh my
so
God,
to speak,
yeah.
Right?
It's crazy. Sorry, you can't see I don't think you can see my face, but I've been making a lot of facial expressions as you're talking, like dramatic, throwing up, miming. Anyway, continue.
Yeah. Well, that's a whole nother can of worms, which I don't even think we're going to have time to get into like the mime stuff.
Wait, I'll talk
so we might have to do a part two, just to talk about like the mime troupe and stuff. But
I love that that's just a casual sentence, like someone's listening and they have no idea what we're talking about. Like, oh yeah, the mime troupe anyway.
It's just a homeschool thing,
You had to be there. And, next episode.
Next episode. Yeah, there's going to have to be part two, just to touch on the mime stuff. Maybe I'll reassemble some of the mime team and we can do a group chat or something.
That'd be crazy.
And talk about that.
Love the mimes.
But one of the things that I get asked a lot, and I know you will probably get asked this, is like people who are either just become parents or they are parents and they're thinking about homeschooling their kids. Like, I get asked all the time, like, oh, would you recommend homeschooling your kids? And like, I think overall you and I had decent experiences homeschooled, but like, is that something if someone's coming to you and asking you that, like, what goes through your head when you're answering that?
Yeah. I think I don't know. I mean, it's a little tricky because I never had the comparison of being public schooled to say like one is better. But I think there's a lot of downsides of homeschooling and there are some pros, but I think it's very situational. Like, I think if you're the type of person who's very like independent and can work at your own pace and like, or maybe you're like a musician that's touring at 15, I don't know. Like, there are lots of situations that I think homeschooling can be a good thing, to like have your own pace, and it's like you're spending a lot of time with your family, and that's good. That can be good, like you're bonding, you have good relationships hopefully with your family, maybe. So like there can be a lot of amazing things, and I'm very grateful for like, I was able to work and I was able to like do all these cool creative things, but I think there was also just so many extremes in our setting with like, just with the like we were talking about, we just kind of briefly talked about like the dress codes. That's just sort of like the surface of just some sort of like social norms that should not have been social norms about like women's like bodily autonomy, and like there's like a lot that we could get into about sort of the psychological impacts of like being in this little bubble, that it felt like a bubble to me. So
Yeah.
I don't know. It's like, I think if you were gonna homeschool, you'll homeschool your kids. Homeschool your kids. I think that it should just be like not so overly spiritualized with every single thing ever. I think if you're like religious, that's cool. Like, I'm never judging anybody. I think that's awesome. But like, I don't know, like, don't force it on your kids. My family wasn't like that, but there was a lot of, instances where it's like, this is the way the world is. This is what you have to think and what you have to believe. And it would bleed into academics too, of like, so like evolution is fake and like, this is history. Basically like Jesus is amazing and these like groups in history are amazing, and Spanish Inquisition, like, oh, that happened real quick, but like, anyways, we're moving on. Christians are great. Like, there's a lot of like bias in my academics that it was like kind of a lot. So I think it took a while for me to sort of unpack. And again, like, there's nothing wrong. Everyone should have their own belief about everything, in the sense of, choose to be like religious, choose to not be religious. Like, I don't know. Just like, I don't really vibe with the forcing of, like,
no,
when it bleeds into academics,
totally
especially like, there should, I don't know, like, if you're gonna homeschool your kids, give them like a variety of like information, teach them how to research, teach them how to, like, evaluate information and have questions for things and think critically, and like, like, I don't think homeschooling is the villain. I think it's just people can be extreme and that can be rough. So just don't be extreme.
Absolutely. No, and I mean, there's a big, obviously, there are a lot of people who homeschool their kids for religious reasons, right? Because they, the school system is broken, or they believe that the school system is broken, or
like indoctrinating kids with like lies and evil.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. And so they want to protect their kids from that. And so I think it goes into, it ties into, homeschool kids tend to be sheltered, right? Because it's mom and dad trying to keep the big bad wolf out at bay, kind of a thing. And, I think ultimately, like you said, it comes down to like, you got to figure out what works for you. But it is a lot of like, I think it's important for parents to be heavily involved in their kids' education, but it's also their responsibility to make sure they're doing the best by their kids. And I agree with you. There's a lot of things that like I was taught through our textbooks and things like that, of just like through that lens of Christianity. And it really skewed the way I looked at things until I got to college, and even after college, and starting to actually like read other history books and start to kind of develop, new feelings around different things, and being like, wait, what? We skipped over all of this, or not understanding like how evolution, is thought to be, right? It is a theory, but it's like, okay, well, that's one, that's a possibility.
Yeah.
And so, when you start to look at everything, you go, oh my gosh, like there's so many things that were just skewed from this one lens.
Yeah. A lot of like fear-based.
That can be really harmful.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah.
My bad.
No, absolutely. A lot of fear-based, type stuff as well.
Yeah. And I was thinking about this also. Something I noticed even while I was like in the bubble is that a lot of homeschool parents have like been through so much in their lives, bro. Like, I remember kind of talking to the homeschool moms once I was like a little older in high school, and I was like, are you okay? Like, they've had hard lives a lot. It's not always, but it's like a pattern that I noticed, that like the parents that have been through like crazy stuff were the ones that were like being the most overprotective and sheltering their kids, because, and it's like, not to like justify, like, you shouldn't like hide your kids away from the world, but like, it just kind of put some context to it, of like, they went through so many bad things and they obviously don't want their kids to have experience in those bad things, but you just can't protect your kid from everything, so it's like a balance and everything. But it was something I noticed to like, give them throw them a bone, like, okay, there's all these crazy dress codes and crazy like, whatever rules, or like very legalistic sometimes, or a lot of, extremes, but like they're clinging for structure in a world where they kind of had none, and probably nobody was looking out for them, and so they want to look out for their kids, which is it's like I get it, but like it doesn't really work.
Yeah.
To like swing to the other extreme, you know?
Yeah. I think what was hard too, and you and I kind of talked about this before we hit recording too, was like, you know, you're growing up in, yeah, you and I grew up in we had community, we had friends, like the antisocial myths that exist around like homeschooling kind of, I don't feel like existed so much in our friend group.
Mm-hmm.
However, there was still bubbles associated with like what was going on in families' like personal lives, you know, and a lot of times when we would get together, everything was presented as like it's all good, right? Everybody's kind of same pace. Mom and dad are happy, you know, bad things aren't happening, you know, but the reality was like families were like falling apart behind the scenes, and things were happening to kids. They were being potentially put in unsafe situations, and you know, and so it's really interesting because that was one of the things we were chatting about, was like, had we been in more of a traditional school situation, would teachers and staff at those schools maybe have picked up on things that we just couldn't pick up on because, well, none of us were like trained therapists, you know?
Yeah. Yes, exactly. And yeah, that's something that we were talking about, is that, you know, if a kid is going to school, like a young kid, there's ideally teachers that are trained and, you know, have been certified to spot certain things if maybe the child is unsafe or maybe they're going through something at home. Like there's a wide variety. Hopefully, you know, people fail all the time. So, you know, it's not like everything's perfect in real school and not in homeschool, but like in general, you know, when you're in a community, a larger community of people that aren't just your friends or family friends, like there can be more accountability, I feel like, and homeschooling can be isolating, like especially in the family bubbles, because it can be scary. And I'm speaking from like experience of people that I know, that basically when I was in my like homeschool world, I kind of thought everything was fine because everybody was like, we're fine, we're put together. And I think that's also like, I don't know, sort of the self-image that comes with that, like evangelical Christianity and a lot of Christianity, where it can be, you know, like we have to look like everything's good, like we're representing Christ, we have to look like him, we have to be like him, and that can kind of get twisted into like we need to keep a front, you know, if we're failing, like we need to look like we have it all together. And so there was a lot of things that I learned about after like graduating that are heartbreaking and horrible, and people that were in family situations that were very unsafe and they went through so much and they should never have had to experience that. And that's horrible. And honestly, the homeschool aspect exaggerated that, in the sense of they didn't really have anywhere to go. Maybe their family was a lot more, we're doing our own education alone. You don't get to go to those groups, you know, and who do you go to? Like your neighbor? Like you don't have like, you know, certified, mandatory reporters. Yeah.
Right.
You don't have those resources, and it can be really scary. And it wasn't even something that I thought about because I was, you know, privileged to have like a safe family environment, but not everybody experiences that. And you're just born into whatever world you're born into. And, you know, it's scary. It can be scary. And homeschooling can, you know, make those situations, can increase the isolation in those situations, you know.
Absolutely. No, I 100% agree with you. And I'm so thankful that both of us grew up in households that were safe and hopefully provided some safety for people in our community. You know, but it definitely existed, and it was weird. It's weird because, like you, I learned about a lot of things after the fact, and I was like, oh, you know, oh shit, that's, you know, I wish I would have noticed earlier, you know, and there's obviously nothing we can do to go back and change certain things, but, you know, to bring awareness to those types of things is very important. And so again, if you see something, say something.
Yes.
That's always very important. And if something ever feels off with your friends, you know, please like speak up and tell people, because there is help that exists out there. But not to leave everything on a super dark note.
Yeah.
But I have really enjoyed talking with you, and I do want to have you back at some point to talk about the mime team.
Oh gosh.
And and the cringiness that existed there, but and maybe some other things as well. But Eliya, this has been freaking fantastic. I love catching up with you and chatting with you. Is there anywhere you want to send people to hear your music, check out, I don't know, music videos, whatever, is there anything you want to plug there?
Thank you so much for that opportunity. I will totally yap about my music. I am on Spotify, Apple Music, all the streaming services. You can check out my album that we talked about. It's just under my name, Eliya Frantz, which is kind of hard to spell. So maybe reference, I don't know if it's going to be like in the title of the podcast.
Yep.
Okay,
I'll
cool.
put it in the show notes.
Then you'll know how to spell
and
it.
Links to everything.
And so I would love if, you checked out my music. Maybe you'll love it. Maybe you'll hate it. But hey, thanks for streaming. And you can follow me on Instagram. That's where I do a lot of my posting for music and things, which is just Eliya Frantz Music. And I also have a band of my own that's newer, and it's called Vinyl Sunsets. That's on Instagram, and you can check us out there. So thank you for the plug. I will gladly be my self-starter self and throw it out there.
Very cool. Well, I didn't know about the band, so I'll be going and following right after this. But yeah, definitely go give Eliya a listen. And if you enjoyed this episode, remember to subscribe, follow, leave a rating, a thumbs up, whatever you got to do on any of the platforms. And yeah, this has been this episode of the Ex-Homeschoolers Club. Until next time, we'll see you later. All right.
See you later.
Peace. All right. We stopped the recording, but it's okay because we had one more thought that we needed to add in regards to dress code at the Achieve dances. So Eliya, hit me. What you got?
Basically, so I was saying about like the strict dress codes for dances, and essentially like following what Jacob was saying of what was sort of being said without words was that it was the woman's responsibility. It was the girl's responsibility to basically kind of control men's like urges and feelings towards them. Like, because there is so much attention on how women need to dress themselves and how they need to cover up themselves, and there was sort of these, speeches that were given to us where, men are sort of like just animalistic in nature, and it's hard for them to control themselves. And so we as women, it's our job, it's our responsibility to help them stay like pure and holy. And it was like, it was very much like preached to us in that sense from like the community, and then it was sort of carried out with those dress codes, not just there but in other like spaces in that whole community. And there was so many like talks given to girls about that topic and how it was our job. And I wasn't, a male, so I don't know what talks the men were given to, but I'm pretty sure it was less about, in general, there wasn't as much focus on these things of taking responsibility for yourself and managing your own emotions. It's puberty, it's rough. Like, I'm not saying that like it's easy, but there wasn't like an equal focus on both ends of, hey, you need to take accountability, you need to work on holding yourself accountable, and that's your job. You know what I mean? It felt like it was very much not equal focus. And that can be so dangerous, like quite literally so dangerous, because as we were saying, like unsafe situations, like it is so much harder to speak out if something happens to you as a woman when you think you've been taught your whole life that it's your fault and your responsibility and your job to control that. Like, yes, that's crazy. Like, outside of it now that my prefrontal cortex is like a bit, further along, like what? Like, that's a direct pipeline.
You are 100% correct, because the thing that us young boys were being taught was that, like, women had a responsibility to present themselves in a way that was not like seductive, sexual in those ways, right? And so, but we weren't being taught that like we also as guys had a responsibility to like to put things in the context of what it was, right? And so I use this example quite a bit with people when I talk about this because we grew up in Southern California. You go to the beach, a million girls are at the beach in bikinis, right? Basically underwear. As a guy, you have to put it into the context that this is not a sexual situation right now. And so I need to be mindful of what I'm seeing and how I'm reacting to it. And that was like something that just didn't get taught. And so it was always really interesting to me because there were certain members of our friend group who like they just couldn't control themselves. You know, it's just like you'd walk by some girls at the beach and like they couldn't help but like look or whatever. And it's hard because I don't want to say that looking in itself is not like I don't even want to say it's not bad, but it's like to acknowledge people in the world is like not bad, but what you do with that information in your brain is like that's the important part. It's like what are you doing, how are you processing that information? It's like, you know, is it in that context of like this is not a sexual thing, you know? And like you said, if the girls felt this responsibility to like we have to dress a certain way, and if a guy comes on to me in a certain way or says a certain things or touches me inappropriately or whatever, it's somehow your fault. That is totally not the truth, because as guys it is our responsibility to one, be looking out for our female friends as best we can and to protect them. And you know that does not include you know, inappropriate touching, does not include like inappropriate text messages, speaking to them inappropriately. Like they are our friends, and it's our job to like be like their friend and take care of them and make them feel safe. And so anyway, that's my
it's a great spiel.
Yeah,
no, it's so true. And it's like obviously there is grace for being a literal teenager. Like I'm not saying that like these teenagers need to be perfect or like have to be these adults already, but it's like it's just the lack of conversation and education in things like consent and what that looks like is so scary, because it's like it was just like the assumption from the adults that like obviously we're banning those things so they won't happen, and that's just like the dumbest thing ever. Like hello, like teenagers are going to be teenagers, and so when they do find themselves in situations like they have no idea, like maybe they don't even know what is inappropriate because it hasn't been like taught to them, you know, in the sense of like consent has to be enthusiastic and it needs to be there.
Right. Enthusiastic like, consent. Oh my gosh. Enthusiastic consent. There's also, I work with somebody and they talk about there's no such thing as universal consent. And so just because it happened one time, whether it's like making out, whether it's actually like having sex or doing a sex act, like that doesn't entitle you as a person to that being the case every single time, right? You have to receive consent every single time. And also if a person is intoxicated or under the influence of something, like they physically are unable to give consent. That is just like a given. And so, enthusiastic consent is like very much a yes, needs to happen all the time. And men and women are obviously, and men, women, theys and thems are always, you know, everybody is at risk of something happening to them. But it does obviously tend to happen more from men to women. And that is sadly so unfortunate. And I think within the homeschool community, there's such a lack of sex ed, because it's like sex is bad, sex is bad, sex is bad, sex is bad. You get married. Oh, sex is on the table, and it's a free for all buffet for you to eat. And it's like, that's not the case. And you know, but like you said, as a teenager, especially as a hormonal teenager, you know, what do you do with that? And we're taught that anything sexual is bad. Like you repress a lot of that, and it tends to come out a lot later in really unfortunate ways.
And what we can talk about now as, you know, 10 or 6 years out of it is you see like the adults that have come from those groups, like people that I grew up with, and like where are they now? And there's a lot of creeps out there. There's a lot. And it's gross and it's sad and it's like crazy, like the actual like frequency of it. Like, it's not normal, I don't think. And that's kind of a scary thing because it's like,
it's really not.
Gosh, like it's just like school. It's just, you're just a teenager and whatever. We're just going to ignore that topic. But that's like such an important topic because that's the rest of your life, that this is such a formative time that, like you were saying, like, it's so like dumb to just like avoid all of that, in the sense of like, make all the girls cover up so that the guys don't have to deal with it. That's not reality. Hello. Like, it's just so simple. It's like first grade level of like, you're going to exist as an adult. Like, this is not, it's not like, hello. You know what I mean? It's like, obviously people can have different opinions about like what women, I don't know, should wear. But I just think it should be whatever you want and whatever you're comfortable with. I love modesty and I love the opposite. Like, do whatever, it's you. Like, do what you want. And like, you have to, you can't just expect everyone to like accommodate to you. That's like so silly. So not reality.
Yeah. Well, and when it's funny because when we talk about like girls being modest, I remember there being a group of girls that would get together every year before summer and they would make their bathing suits because they couldn't find a bathing suit in the store. And they were making like full long sleeves with like shorts and skirts that came down to your knees. And it was like utterly ridiculous. And it's one thing if you want to make that. It's one thing if you want to wear that and you feel comfortable in that. I don't care. But it was not, I didn't feel ever like it was like, oh, I want to make this. It was like, I have to make this and I have to wear this. And it's such a double standard because as guys, you know, we got to wear shorts and take our shirts off at the beach. And, you know, and there's kind of, because of the fact that we also grew up in a heteronormative group, it's so much of like, you know, girls shouldn't be looking at guys sexually and guys shouldn't be looking at girls sexually. But also like there was never any talk either of like, are we looking at the same sex sexually? And things like that. And this is a whole rabbit hole that we can obviously go down. And I would love to have you back and chat more about this because I'm also very passionate about like this particular thing. Because it's just like utterly insane to me. And I have experiences too of some of the detrimental things that came out of that, of just like within my own sex life. And so, you know, one of the things that I have learned recently, because growing up, it was always taught like masturbation bad, and like recently I've taken on more of the phrase of like masturbation saves lives, because it is a part of like teaching yourself that like sex is a healthy natural part of life, but it has to be done in the right context, with a consenting partner, with enthusiastic consent, and things like that. So
it's so true. It's just like you can't avoid all of that. It's like being a teenager is like the perfect time to have those uncomfortable conversations. And it's like, I know that that's not just a homeschooler thing. I know that can be a universal thing, which is sort of like, I feel like the older generation, it's like, we don't want to talk about that. Just figure it out, you know? It's like, it's an uncomfortable thing, but it's like, it's just like the risks of what we've seen can happen as those kids go to adults without the right education, or with porn education and nothing else. Porn and guilt, like that's it. And you know, like it's scary what can sort of happen later in life. And even if it's not the extreme of like turning into a creep and turning into this like crazy person, like it's just like rough as an individual to figure it out when you feel like you should have had this figured out already, or you don't know what's normal and what's not. And it's just like overall, like you just have to like have education, not like taboo for that kind of thing, because it doesn't work. We know it doesn't work now. So can we just not do that again?
No, it doesn't. Yeah, absolutely. No, abstinence, and not only just like teaching abstinence it's fine in practice if you choose to.
Totally. Hey,
but the idea of like this lack of, let's just, like you said, skip all talking about it, skip all everything, just set rules and boundaries around, like, you know, boys are blue and girls are red and together they make purple and we're not having any purple be made, kind of a thing. It's like, it's dumb. It's like, you actually need to understand what is going on in the human body and what sex looks like, and how to show enthusiastic consent when necessary, and things like that. And just to, there are plenty of things out there now to educate people and to help with that education, because obviously it is very embarrassing to talk with mom and dad about these things, right? And mom and dad, I'm sure it is very embarrassing to tell your kids about the birds and the bees, and how all that stuff works. Nobody wants to do that, but there are so many great books, there's so many great podcasts, there's so many great like documentaries and other things out there to help with like understanding how the human body works, how the mind works, your mind is your biggest sex organ. So, how all of those things work in conjunction and can work in a very healthy and mature and natural way, to give everyone like the best experience possible.
Yeah.
So,
yes, it's so important. So important. And we've seen the results of where you don't want to end up. Not gonna like call anybody out, obviously, but it was also not people in the community. It was like coaches that I had, or like outside of all of my circles or whatever, that maybe were pastors or maybe were these things, and then it's like scary what can happen when there's just like no outside support or education or anything, and you're just kind of like left to your own devices. And it's like, some people, it's good. It's not good. Like, yeah. Anyway, that was not like very academic speaking, but it's just yeah.
I 100% agree with you, and that is very key. And so I appreciate you bringing that up and wanting to hit record again to touch on that, because that is super important. And so, mom, dad, talk to your kids about sex, and consent, especially, because
if nothing else,
is super important. And I know we said it at the, if nothing else, consent, and understanding bodily autonomy. And I know we said it at the end of our recording, but like, if you see something, say something, and like stand up and protect those people around you. Please.
Please and thank you. Yes, absolutely. Be a good human being.
Yes. All right. Thank you again, Eliya.
It was so cool to talk to you about all the things, all the topics. I hope the listeners are enjoying.